Hello, school board members and members of the Sun Prairie community. This is Nick Reichoff, Assistant Superintendent of Operations, together with Phil Fry, our Director of Business Services, and Chris Sadler, our Director of Human Resources. We created this slideshow to promote discussion at the June 24th school board meeting regarding the district's budget deficit. We've been talking about this for a few months now and are looking for a discussion and potential action at the June 24th meeting to provide direction on how to address the long-term budget deficit for the 25-26 school year. We're going to start with just a quick review of the proposed referendum structure and the budget forecasting model. We're recommending a recurring operating referendum to take place in November of 2024. As a reminder, the November 2022 revenue cap increase ends in 24-25, and so this would begin after that. We're recommending a one-year implementation of teacher compensation funds for 24-25. That would take effect shortly after the November 2024 referendum. And then 4 years of a phase-in of the tax levy increases from 2025 to 2029. Without clarity regarding the state budget, there's just no way for us to predict the needs beyond that time frame. We're already pushing this through 2 upcoming biennial budgets from the state. And while everybody would agree that a longer term solution without additional possible referendum is desirable, we're just not in a position to predict what the state legislature will do for school funding, even up through 2029 or beyond. As a reminder, Phil has outlined through the use of a complex forecasting model what our projected deficits will be. We are projecting a $3.5 million deficit for 2024-25 with the concept that that would be covered through the use of fund balance that's been set aside for budget stabilization. The budget deficits beyond that grow as structural deficits often do based on the lack of funding from the state. And so you can see by 2028-29 school year, we're looking at a $12 million shortfall. We want to go through 3 core components of a potential referendum for the fall of 2024. The first part of this would be teacher compensation. We brought this forward a couple of school board meetings ago. You may remember that the district used funds from the 2019 operating referendum to increase teacher salaries. The idea that would bring all teachers to about average with Dane County. However, other school districts have held operating referendums between our 2019 referendum and now, and that's caused a leapfrog effect where districts hold a referendum, invest a significant amount of money in teacher compensation, and jump over other districts, continually increasing the district or the county average. This graph shows Dane County teacher salaries, each square on this chart, and I know they're grayed out. That's because those are all the teachers in Dane County. The dark brown squares and then the dark trend line is Sun Prairie, and this is 21-22. So this is about the close of our investment in teacher salaries from the 2019 referendum. As you can see, that investment put our salaries right in line with the Dane County average. However, by 23-24, that leapfrog effect that I mentioned is evident. And you can see the light trend line that goes from just over 50,000 up diagonally through the scatter plot. Our dark trend line is Sun Prairie, and you can see that we're now falling below the Dane County average. As just a point of reference, the inset graphic is the Dane County and Sun Prairie trend lines without MMSD. And you can see that factoring out MMSD, we're about even with the trend line for Dane County averages based on years of service. Interestingly enough, though, MMSD is not the highest paid school district in the county. This trend line here shows another school district that is the most highly paid teacher salaries above the county trend line. And that's before some districts make an investment in the coming year in teacher salaries beyond where they are now. So in addition to analyzing teacher salaries using that scatter plot and the data from that, we also have analyzed teacher salaries in relation to starting pay. And so base pay for bachelor's and master's can be found in this chart. We have a lot of data around 2023-24, and you can see Sun Prairie ranks near the bottom of all of the districts, that including Madison and the districts surrounding Madison. We're also aware of a few districts that have published their 24-25 base pay. And so this all just demonstrates the need to invest funds in our teacher compensation moving forward. We're bringing forward 3 options, but really it's a spectrum of options for the board to consider. The first option would be an investment that would get Sun Prairie teachers to the Dane County average, based on those 2 methods of reviewing the data, looking at both base wage and the scatter plot of where all teachers fall. We believe that that would take about $2,500 per teacher. That would move our starting pay up to about $50,500. Option 2 would be to get our teacher average compensation up comfortably above the Dane County average. So option 2 would be a $3,400 per teacher increase. This is the recommendation that the administration brought forward a couple of board meetings ago. Again, this would put starting pay at about $51,400, or about $1,000 above the Dane County average. We heard at the last school board meeting a desire by some board members that our teachers be the highest paid teachers in the county. In order to do that, we would need to move starting pay up over $55,000. That would be about a $7,000 per teacher adjustment, and our teachers would be on average about $5,000 or $4,591 above the Dane County average. Option 1, total increase would amount to about $2.2 million. Option 2 would be about $3 million total. And in order to reach the top of the county first teacher salary, we'd have to invest about $6 million additional dollars into teacher salary. This is all above and beyond the 4.12 cost of living increase that we've already factored in. So when we look at part 1, the teacher compensation portion of a potential referendum, administration is recommending the incorporation of that $3 million. That's option 2. This would result in a salary adjustment of $3,400 for all teachers and move our starting pay up over $51,000. The second part of the potential referendum is to meet our baseline operating needs. As we've talked about significantly over the last several months, the state has not kept pace with inflation, and funding of school districts has not allowed districts to meet the needs of increasing costs based on the pandemic and based on inflation. And so it's important to remember that since 2011, the state has not met inflationary increases for school districts in any single year. And in fact, in 3 of those years, actually gave schools a $0 increase. So despite careful stewardship of the dollars, reallocation of funds, and making the most of all of the existing revenue we now have a structural budget deficit. This disinvestment by Wisconsin in public schools is pretty evident. We've fallen from 11th in the nation, which was above the national average, to 25th in the nation, which is 5% below the national average, since between 2002 and 2021. And this is before 2 years of $0 increases in 22 and 23. The cumulative difference of that, it really adds up. And we've talked about this data in previous meetings. Over the course of those intervening years, that cumulative disparity between inflation and what school districts actually receive from the state is about $3,300 per student. So at about 8,400 students, that's over $27 million. So clearly we've managed our budget much better than that. We don't have a $27 million shortfall. We're projecting over the next several years to reach about $14 million. And so we've really tried over the last several years to manage the existing funds we have, but this disinvestment is reaching a tipping point. So the baseline operating need we're estimating is about $14 million. $6.5 million would be needed in 25-26 to offset the deficit projected for next year and then into 25-26. In 26-27, 27-28, and 28-29, we're estimating about a need for $2.5 million each of those years. So that's a total revenue authority increase of $14 million. It's important to remember what's at stake if we do not find another way to bring in additional revenue. A $7 million decrease in spending would have deep impacts on our school district. If you just look at this as an illustrative across the board reduction, $7 million results in about 91 staff members lost, and then several $100,000 in department budgets being cut. It's important to remember if a referendum doesn't pass by 28-29, if we needed $14 million in total reductions, these would double. So we'd be looking at a school district with 180 fewer staff members and or almost a couple of $1 million worth of other cuts. Now, obviously, this is not the way that the district would actually approach cuts. We would look comprehensively at all of the options and make cuts furthest away from our student achievement and outcome goals. However, these cuts are significant and would have a dramatic impact on the operations of the school district, as well as our ability to meet all students' needs. We did have a question last time about the amounts that Phil has projected without the referendum and the impact of a potential referendum using that 6.5 million, 2.5, and 2.5, and 2.5. So we wanted to show that as we go through the first biennial budget in this potential referendum, that's 25 to 27, we'd have less than $1 million of wiggle room with the dollar amounts that are being proposed. That does grow for 27, 28, and 28, 29. But we feel like in order to be responsible, we need to make sure that the funding authority is there. We have no idea what the state legislature will approve for state funding and what may or may not survive a governor's veto. And so there is a little bit more wiggle room in those last 2 years of the referendum to ensure that we can adjust to any changes in the state budget at that time. So administratively, for this part 2, this operating need, we are recommending that we incorporate that full $14 million into a fall referendum question in order to address this lack of funding by the state legislature for public schools. Funds would be used to maintain our current class sizes, maintain existing student services support, and ensure that we have funds available for competitive wages and benefits for all employee groups. That moves us to a third part of a potential referendum. At the May 28th school board meeting, school board members indicated a desire to add new costs into a potential referendum in an effort to bolster programming and have additional services as a part of the referendum question. So the following slides contain some of those examples. What we did was really take a look at Student Result Policy 2 and Student Result Policy 3 in order to think about what high leverage strategies to spend additional funds could be used in order to bolster programming and ensure that students' needs are being met. So that was kind of the lens that we used in order to look at these possible options. This first slide shows some options to expand programming that does not include adding staff. We heard clearly from school board members that there are concerns about staffing levels and that staffing levels are already generous. And so we looked at ways to increase programming first that did not involve adding additional staff. And so some of those include expanding our programming, as board members mentioned, to post-secondary institutions or online options for students. We also thought about expanding access for our dual language immersion program and for after-school activities. We also heard from the board the desire to engage in additional opportunities to be innovative and expand programming. And so we also thought about being able to allocate funds for consultant contracts to write grants and to study the feasibility of additional programs moving forward. So the costs of all of these are indicated on the slides. And we'll be happy to answer questions at the school board meeting or between now and the school board meeting if people have any questions about these. Although we know that this is not a priority of the school board, we did want to provide an opportunity to think about what would expanding programming look like if it did include adding staff. There are some programs that just require oversight of staff members, and so there's no way to expand them without also adding staff. And so we believe in the importance of youth apprenticeship opportunities for students and capstone courses, high school capstone courses for students. And so we certainly could look at expanding those options. However, youth apprenticeship opportunities require staff to establish partnerships with local businesses to oversee students while they're participating in the youth apprenticeship activity and to complete a significant amount of documentation. So that would require additional staffing. If we wanted to offer additional courses that sometimes get reduced when course signups are low, we could add staffing to ensure that even if only a small number of students sign up for academies, Project Lead the Way classes, Advanced World Languages, etc., that we could run those. But we would need additional FTE to do that. We also have 2 student services areas that are pushing up against the established ratios, and that would be 1.5 psychologist positions and a half-time counselor position. We can certainly talk more about those if this is even anything the board wants to discuss, but we just felt it was responsible to also address areas of potential programming expansion, even if they would require additional staffing to do so. So we can't talk about the impact of a potential referendum without talking about taxes. So we want the board and the public to be very clear about what any potential impact to the taxes would be with a referendum. So going back to just our administrative recommendation for a baseline, a $3 million investment in teacher compensation, in addition to the $14 million $14 million for operating expenses brings us to $17 million total. Working with R.W. Baird and PMA Financial Advisors, 2 of our trusted partners when looking at complex financial matters, we believe that the projected impact of that $17 million would be about 60 cents per 1,000. So the mill rate would increase from 9.86 to $10.46. What that means is for every $300,000 in property value, that there would be about $180 more in yearly taxes moving forward. The board should also know, as it's considering additional teacher compensation or additional programming funds for the referendum, that each additional $1 million in referendum costs would add about 10 cents to the mill rate. And so for every 10 cents, for every $1 million is about a 10-cent increase. Why is that important? It's important to remember where our relative taxing rate is in comparison to others in Dane County. And so our current mill rate at $9.86, highlighted in orange here, is the 4th highest in Dane County. With the increase of the 60 cents, that would take us to $10.46, roughly the 3rd highest in the county. For each $1 million that the board would opt to add into the referendum, that does add another 10 cents to the mill rate. And so just something to be considerate about. We obviously have no idea what other districts will do and how mill rates will pan out for 24-25, but this is our estimate on where it would put us and where it would put us in relation to other school districts in the county. As a reminder, we are on a timeline for a potential referendum. We had been looking at June 15th to have some clear direction from the board on proceeding. We have needed to schedule this meeting on June 24th to have further conversation, and we're hoping to have clear direction on where to go soon. That's because through the month of July, we'd have to identify the final amount needed and the final structure using our financial advisors. We'd have to create a communications and engagement plan, and we'd have to bring a final resolution for that ballot question to the school board. There is a statutory deadline on that of the end of August. We would implement that communication and awareness campaign through August, September, October. We have to remember that absentee ballots start getting sent out pretty early for a November 5th referendum vote. So as we look forward to Monday's discussion, what we're really, I think, looking for is discussion and a potential vote on the administration's recommendation for the $3 million for teacher compensation, discussion and potential vote on moving ahead with the $14 million toward operating costs within a referendum. Further discussion and potential vote by school board members on any additional funds the board wants to allocate toward teacher compensation, and then, of course, discussion and vote potentially on additional funds to expand programs. So those are just kind of a high-level framework for how to think about the discussion on Monday night. Phil, Chris, and I are all available if school board members have questions, and we look forward to further discussion at the meeting on the 24th.